Hey guys, Kiki Fit Cosplay here, and today I'm going to show you how to make your own pattern using press and seal, plastic wrap, and a marker. If you use regular plastic wrap, you want to cover it with a layer of tape, whether it be duct tape or painter's tape, just to give it more structure. The press and seal, however, not only sticks to you, but it sticks to itself, so as long as you do more than one layer, it will hold its structure enough for your pattern. Once the press and seal is on, you are going to take your marker and draw out your pattern on your body. Designing the back can be tricky if you don't have someone to help you, so as long as you mark the center of your back, you can always draw out your design on the plastic wrap after you cut it off of your body. I'm planning to mirror the image, so I only had to worry about drawing out half of the pattern. And then you can very carefully cut yourself out of the plastic wrap anywhere along the side that you're not using. And there you have your design. Pretty! The next step is tracing it onto paper. Next, you cut out all the pieces. If you use the press and seal, then it'll actually stick to the paper, so you won't have to tape it down. You're also going to want to add a seam allowance to the edge, so when you sew it together, it's not too small. I made a larger seam allowance because I was adding boning to the inside of this. I do want to admit I messed up a little bit. I got a little too excited about the cutting part and I forgot a major step. That would be marking the pattern. You're going to want to add registration marks, number your panels, and I also put arrows so I know which way the grain goes when I'm cutting out the patterns. The arrows are optional, but depending on the fabric that you use, like a velvet, if you cut them out on a different angle, then there will be a color or texture difference between your panels. That is why I've made it a default habit to make the arrows on all of my pattern pieces. Once all the pattern pieces were marked, cut out, and placed on the paper, I went back with my marker and traced the seam allowance around each one. Once I was happy with how the patterns looked, I peeled the press and seal off of the paper, and then I copied all the markings onto the paper, and then I cut each piece out. It actually started to rain as I was cutting these pieces out, so I had to grab everything and run inside with it and wait. It was, I think, 20 minutes, and then it was a completely different day outside. That's Winnipeg for you. Once the sun came out, I changed it into something that wouldn't give me a ridiculous tan line. This fabric is actually a curtain, by the way. And began to cut my pattern pieces out. The top portion of this dress is actually going to be double layered, so either you cut 4 pieces of each pattern piece, or if you have a liner to go underneath, you can cut 2 pieces in this fabric and 2 pieces in another fabric, but altogether you will need 4 pieces of each panel. I did not pin the pattern to the fabric, I just used chalk to trace around the edges and then mark the pattern pieces. Once all of the pattern pieces were traced out, I cut them out, and I had folded my fabric, so I only had to cut once to get 2 pieces. Then it was time to move inside. My next step was to sew all of the pieces together. I started by sewing the number 1 pieces together, which created my center seam. Then it was a matter of adding the panels to the side one after another. The only 2 pieces I had to actually pin together were pieces 1 and 2, because that's right where the kind of boob curve goes, so I wanted to make sure that those lined up correctly. But aside from that one little curve, it was pretty straightforward, just one panel after another until it was one long continuous strip. I did not sew together the very last panel because that's where I was going to be installing the zipper on the back. You are also going to want to redo all of these steps for the lining as well. Once you have all of the panels sewn together, it should look a little bit something like this. More or less, depending on what pattern you designed. Next up was the skirt. I used the pattern pieces from the top of the dress to create a slight curve and measured it out so it would be the same width as the top of the dress. I wanted this dress to be about 15 inches long, so since there was a slight curve on the top, I went around the dress and measured 15 inches in several places, which created a natural curve along the bottom. As you can see here, I was very limited to the amount of fabric I could use, but I wanted a little bit more flair to the skirt, so after I cut these pieces out, I made some wedges for the sides of the skirt to help fluff it out a bit. Using the skirt pieces that I've already cut out, I used that as a guidance line to create my little pizza wedges. Pizza. The only measurement I took was along the bottom edge so that I knew that the width of each piece was going to be the same. Another method I could have used is to cut the first one out and then use that one as a pattern to trace the other one out, but this way worked just fine. It doesn't take a lot of fabric, but it really does add a lot when you're trying to add some flair to a skirt. Let's all just pause for a moment and admire this handsome helper here. He was just sleeping so peacefully I couldn't bear to make him move. This next part is pretty basic, I guess. I just sewed all 4 portions in the same order as I had them laid out on the floor. Those little pizza slices were going to be on either side, so I sewed all 4 pieces together to make a complete skirt because I was just going to cut out the spot for the zipper after. Next, I had taken the lining piece, not the outer piece of the top, the lining, and I started to put boning on it. The boning was going to add a little bit of structure and security around the top portion because I was going to have a long flowy skirt in the back and it was going to be a little bit of weight to the dress. I thought I would, keep the girls in. If you do not have boning, you can always use old zip ties and sew a little pocket along the edge of the seam there, seam edge. If you need help, I'm sure they have tutorials out there of how to make a little pocket for those, but yeah. Let me know if you want me to make a tutorial on that, because I totally could. Anyway, then I started to sew some lace around the trim. I took the outer piece and lined the edges of the back and the top with lace. The lace is actually pointing opposite of where it will be pointing in the end, because I will be sandwiching the lace between the outer layer and the lining layer, right, which I'm doing right here. So basically I will sew both of the garments together along the top, just the top for now. The back of the dress will be open still because we have to install the zipper there, and then the bottom will be open because we're sewing that to the skirt. It's very important that you make sure that the lace is not getting caught between the seams and it's still laying flat and tucked inside while you're sewing along the edge. If you didn't want lace around the top end, you would just cut out the whole lace step, but you would still do this step, if that makes sense. You need to make sure that the panels are the same distance apart on the lining and the outer piece, because if they're not, it's not going to match up when you sew them together. And sometimes it's just easier if you pin it in advance. If you notice it's kind of bunched up in the middle, I actually go back here and I cut little notches into the edge there, and that helps to flatten the curve. This is my curtain. I started by cutting off all of the little, those little hoop ring things that you slide the, oh my gosh, English, the rod, slide the rod through. Yeah, I cut all that stuff off so that it was just a plain piece of fabric. Then I make even more pizza slices because apparently I have a pizza addiction while making this video. Anywho, I cut those off so it's angled a bit more so it'll look better when it drapes in front of me. Then we do the same to the other side so it's all symmetrical and stuff. Okay, and then I take the back and I make a little notch so that it'll line up with the back of the skirt, and then that's where the zipper is going to go. Then I pin the front, which you can see I marked in chalk where I wanted to start each side of the panel, right in the middle. Yeah, just off from the middle, I guess. Then it was just a little playing around with all of the fabric, trying to make evenly spaced, what do you call those things? Pleats. I assure you, I have not started drinking in the middle of this tutorial. I have just gone a little nutty, apparently. Anyway, once you have all of the pleats evenly pinned, then you sew them into place. P.S. I think I've had too much coffee. As if the curtain wasn't loud enough for this dress, I decided to add a little bit more ribbon around the edge. Don't do as I did here. I just sewed the lace on straight here, but I actually went back and stitch ripped it all off because I didn't like how flat it looked, and then I went back and I bunched it all and re-sewed it back on. Then it was just a matter of me sewing the top to the skirt and then adding the zipper to the back. Now, because the world is in an apocalypse situation, I didn't have the right color zipper, so that's why I added the lace to the back so that I could do a hidden zipper effect and hide the zipper underneath the lace. I mean, I think it worked for the most part, at least. If you didn't want to use a zipper, you could do a corseted back by looping a bunch of ribbon all the way down a couple inches apart and then running some string through it and yada yada yada. I just did a zipper. I did think about that, but this last detail here, I took a string and I made like a little fake corset thing up the top part of the shirt. I just used a large needle to thread these through the actual shirt. I was going to make little eyelets, but I felt with a thread this small, I could just get away with sewing it on as a detail. Anywho, that is how I made my little Rapunzel dress here. If you have any other questions or concerns, you can always let me know in the comments below. If you like this tutorial, give this video a big thumbs up. And if you want to see more videos like this, subscribe to my channel. And I will see you guys next time. Bye!